Good afternoon, everyone. This is Wellfairy on tnsradio.ning.com, Scottish Sovereigns on the land.ning.com, and we've got our own website up and running. It's www.welfare.org.uk. Sorry about that. My email there is wellfairy@welfare.org.uk. Good afternoon, everybody. Nik and Neo will be joining me to do sort of a brief sort of news update for everybody. Then we're going to play a pod, which is around tax credits, joint claims. It's quite interesting, quite a good pod. It's Nik and myself discussing a particular case, which was quite difficult, quite intense. Okay, so then after that we're going to do a bit on HATOS, play a couple of audios, and then hopefully, if we've got time, we're going to talk about job seeking skills, CVs, how to write a decent CV. What else? Covering letters, how to handle yourself at an interview, what employers look for. I mean, if anybody needs any help around that, I did back to work advice as well, so I'm quite good with job searching and interview techniques and recruitment and what employers look for. So if anyone wants to ask me anything about that, feel free. Okay, right. So news update. Obviously, ATOS has been in the news an awful lot for us this week. I think it's going to be a long-running issue. We've uncovered lots of stuff that's going on, but we plan to cover ATOS more in the second part of the show. So I will talk about really what I wanted to, and that is benefit scrounging. Right, the amount of people the reason I'm bringing this up today is because I did a bit of a pod with Nik on compliance, and compliance is the new sort of palatable, I call it, term for fraud. I mean, people hear the word fraud and run a mile, whereas if you get a letter from the compliance team, you're not so terrified, and it is a nicer way of putting it. I'm looking at an e-petition at the moment, and the success rate of showing that the government brought out a hotline to shop a benefit cheat. The ads were even on TV, so it was a big thing again to demonise benefit claimants, make them look as bad as possible, because everybody that claims benefits is a scrounger, aren't they? But shop a benefit scrounger. The success of their hotline was 0.31%. So that means a large number of people are being maliciously accused of benefit fraud. Such people should be subject to criminal law similar to wasting police time. There's a petition. I will copy and paste it as we speak, and I'll put it in the chat box, as I'm becoming great at multitasking. Nik, are you there?
Yeah.
Would you do you want to jump in and bring in your news item?
Yeah, just trying to pull it up at the moment. May have escaped a lot of people's attention. I know this was nowhere to be found on mainstream media, but last week I think there was a major protest ended up in Trafalgar Square by a group called Disabled People Against Cuts. They started a march at the 2 p.m. Wednesday in Leicester Square, marched down through Trafalgar Square. When they actually reached Trafalgar Square, they locked themselves together in the wheelchairs and basically stopped most of the traffic in the centre of London. There's another group linked with them also turning up a great deal on the internet called the Black Triangle campaign. The Black Triangles are actually a reference back to the Nazi concentration camps, where that was a mark for the disabled people. One of his quotes: "Disabled people do not like to inconvenience the citizens of London, but we had to get out on the streets of London and let the people know what is happening in their name." There is quite a few different organisations joining force on this, a lot of local organisations coming together. The most astounding thing is very little in the mainstream press, which was a bit of a surprise to me. The one non-surprise was absolutely nothing showing on BBC whatsoever, but having been told that Atos is also now the primary IT provider to the BBC, I don't think there's any surprise there.
No. Sorry, go on. I was just saying no, that wasn't a surprise.
I think, I mean, there's some general quotes here. I presume someone will put the link in the chat room. There's a lot of very aggrieved people. I think we have some more stuff still to come on this. There are many people at the moment in so desperate. I think they're talking in terms of 30 suicides a week, which I just find that completely inconceivable. And this is just the case of people who thought they had their financial means in order to deal with some very major healthcare issues, are suddenly finding they can't even rely on that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's a poor situation. Also, last week was the big protest in central London. I think we did vaguely talk about it. The 28 Remploy factories that are closing, that they're having a consultation with the staff on the closures of the Remploy factories, and we all know where consultations lead, they lead nowhere. So those factories will all close, all those disabled people. I actually don't know how many it is, it must be thousands and thousands of them if it's 28 factories and they all close, which I think they plan to close them all. So again, we're finding that people with a disability or people that are sick are being targeted. Actually, just really quickly, I'm just on this, I met an old work colleague yesterday for lunch, and she's not, she's a really lovely girl, really, works doing they now call it the early intervention team. So all the families that have got vulnerable children, they have to fill in what's called a Common Assessment Framework form, a CAF form. The provider, so the nursery or the professional person involved with the child, if there are problems or issues or concerns, normally it's concerns raised about that child, the professional is supposed to fill in something called a CAF, a Common Assessment Framework form, which lists all their needs, and then you're supposed to have something called Team Around Attack meeting, a Team Around the Child meeting, which would then, you would invite the family to that and move on with the family on helping, solve the family's problems. So you might have somebody, people from housing there, so people from the council there, or social housing. You would have, the nursery. You would have maybe, the school. You would have the counsellor that's there, the drug involvement, whoever professionals are involved will be at this TAC meeting. Anyway, that's the job she's doing. That's besides the point. But she was saying that the issue with disabled people and the issue with sick people and vulnerable families and the cuts, because she's still there. I got made redundant 6 months ago, but she stayed. She took a different job, so she stayed, and the cuts are just so horrendous, and she's seeing it firsthand. So basically she was saying to me that she thinks it's, coming from her, I was absolutely gobsmacked, but she thinks there's, it's social cleansing, and that, people like us are being pushed further down, and I think she's right. They plan to exterminate people, and they do. And I thought it was me being a bit freaky, but it's people that I would never have expected to say that are saying so. Anyway, sorry, Nick. Have you finished, or have you got a bit more to say, or should we bring Neo in?
I think I've covered the general bits of it, and it is something we're going to revisit later.
Yeah.
I've put the link in the chat room if people want to follow through on there. I mean, ultimately, if anyone wants to Google Atos, you can get a heck of a lot coming at you.
Yeah, that's a Google term and a half, isn't it, what that brings up?
Yeah.
Anyway, Neo, do you want to talk about your super duper news item that's really, I think, really interesting?
Yeah, I've got a couple of items. There's one. I'm going to read a paragraph from a document which I found yesterday, and considering that there's a news article which I also saw, which I think was maybe I don't know exactly the age of the article, but it's quite recent, and it's kind of like they were trying to break down, the government, how much they want to save by cutting this and cutting that, and they kind of list some of the benefits, and I think it's related to this because according to this document, so let's say they want to cut 2 billion here on this benefit or 2 billion there on this whatever, but I'll just read this out so you get an idea. It's subtitled "Addressing Need," and it states here. Nationally, up to £12.7 billion of means-tested benefits were unclaimed. All right?
Yeah.
Let's say that again. 12.7 billion of means-tested benefits were unclaimed in 2008 and 9. That's representing 85% take-up of available benefits. Yeah? They said this compares with 9.99 billion of means-tested benefits unclaimed in 2006-7. Okay? So there's 9.99, almost 10 billion of unclaimed benefits in 2006 and 7. And 12.7 billion of unclaimed benefits during 2008 and 9. Also states that at that time, using estimates supplied by the Office of National Statistics, this indicated that up to 26.6 million was going unclaimed by the people of my area, which is people of South Somerset. He said an assumption can therefore be made that the then unclaimed figure of 26.6 million would now be considerably higher. Okay, so I guess the 12.7 billion would be, I suppose, nationwide, and the smaller number, the 26.6 million, is unclaimed for just the South Somerset area. So I thought people would like to have heard that, because I mean, the government's making excuses that it needs to cut money here and cut money there, but it's almost as if it doesn't make any sense, because there's a huge number of people who aren't even claiming benefits. So it's there's a huge number that's not being spent on benefits because they're unclaimed. So that's one thing I think people might be interested in listening to.
This was a big one for me because I used to do welfare rights advice, and I was made redundant. I'll just tell you quickly how awful it was. They paid me from April last year, knowing I was going, and I was paid pretty well. I was on about 35 grand, so I was taking home over 2 grand a month, which isn't bad for what I was doing. I was quite happy. I was pretty well paid. So I was going in, and I mean, I'm actually a bit disgusted with myself now, but I wasn't very well mentally. It took a real lot out of me, and I suppose I am making excuses. But from April till October, when I left, I went in every single day. I couldn't do any advice work unless I did do bits for people, because I was sort of doing, but they refused to buy the subscriptions for the sites that I needed to access. So we had benefit calculators that we could access, that we paid for. We had subscriptions to RightsNet, subscriptions to other places, subscriptions for handbooks, etc. So probably it wasn't a massive amount. I reckon me and my colleague, so we're talking about 2 of us, so subscriptions for both of us would have probably covered, I don't know, 500 quid, and that would have been it for the whole year. They wouldn't pay them. We had to put in something called a DEP, and everyone, even if you wanted some fucking paper, excuse my language, but it got to the point, if you wanted paper, you couldn't print in colour, you had to print in black and white, you had to print on 2 sides. It got ridiculous. If you wanted a pack of paper, it had to be ordered, you had to put in this DEP form, it had to go to the director of your service. So we're talking about somebody that earns like in the region of, 148 grand a year. So every Monday they would meet, your DEPs all had to be, your requests had to be in by Friday. So, so I wanted a subscription for 70 quid. That would go in, and they were all refused, all of them. So I went into work from April to October with access to nothing. And because of the legal situation, I couldn't give advice, and my colleague couldn't give advice to families or people or anyone, because we weren't insured. And if I'd given inaccurate advice, the council could have been sued. So I was paid that amount of money to go in every day to do nothing. So really, I suppose you're all thinking, well, why the fuck did you go in? Why didn't you just leave? well, my redundancy payment was at stake. I'd been there for a while. I was in a state of, I don't know, you get treated so badly, you can't believe that people would treat you like that. You really can't. You don't believe that, you know, an initial layout of, I don't know, 100 quid for them so I can actually come in and do my work and help people get money for themselves. You know, it's not something that I'm sitting there doing, you know, inputting on a database. Well, I did do that also, but, you know, my work was to, you know, help vulnerable families. But I couldn't. From April last year to October, I went into work every day and did more or less what I wanted to do. So I know that probably sits, you know, bad taste in my mouth. So I'm sorry that it probably leaves a bad taste in yours, but it's true, and I think that's probably happening all over the place. Sorry, I've gone on a bit of a rant there.
So is that because of all cuts? You're saying that cuts to the workplace?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, like that sort of thing was happening when I was there as well. You know, when I said to you before that I was coming into a job which didn't even exist, because they weren't offering me a job. As in, I had a job, but I just walked around a building for 8 hours because I had nowhere to go to do any work. It's literally like that. It's
very weird going into work every day, because I still had to go in. Do my hours. I mean, I'd have longer. God, it sounds really awful, but I'd have longer lunch breaks. I'd leave early. I'd go in late, and towards the end, I mean, I had a couple of months off sick anyway, because it was making me really ill. I got down to 6.5 stone. I mean, I'm small anyway. You know, people coming up to me and asking me if I had some really awful disease, because I looked so ill. It made me really, really ill. I don't think that people can imagine what it does to you, something like that. Well, you probably can now. But it was grim. But I mean, your news item for me is really, I don't know, significant, because I mean, I'm reading from this. It says from during 2010-11, so that would have been the year before last year, and I would have been working hard then. The welfare benefit team undertook casework for 835 clients, and I read earlier that was the equivalent of 2.5 full-time posts. So 2 full-time, 1 part-time. So 835 clients across South Somerset, achieving an annual income for clients of 1.58, so 1.5 million. In addition, clients received a total of 321,000 in lump sums, so combined total nearly £2 million. And please note that these figures are provisional due to the time lag involved in benefits being awarded and clients confirming their awards. And we would expect these figures to show a further increase over the coming months. So really, 2.5 posts can get people nearly £2 million in unclaimed benefits. Apparently, it looks like that was 14 times the amount claimed back was 14 times the cost of the service. So it's worth the funding. You know, it really is worth the funding, and they do. Benefit advisors do a good job.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really good examples they put on that document as well. You know, I don't know if it's probably necessary to read them, but there's there's case studies where people have really got some genuine help, and they've gone to say like like assessments from ESA and all that kind of stuff, and they've had really good outcomes by having people help them. And I think these people are, I'm trying to remember where they came from. I'm trying to remember if they're, I think it was something, yeah, I was looking at, because it was McCullum one, when he spoke to Vincent a couple of weeks ago, he was mentioning something he had a conversation with about Mr. T, and he mentioned some guy, which is an Irish position in the welfare system, or it could just be in the councils. I think we call it a community welfare officer. And I'm trying to look, community welfare officer. Well, I found that's an Irish one. So I'm trying to find the equivalent of that to England, Scotland and Wales, right? And I just came up with this document, and what seems to be here is the title as being a senior welfare officer. So I don't know, I mean, you know, I appreciate if McCullum one's out there when he's in the chat box, if he could like put something in the chat box just to say what the equivalent may be for a community welfare officer in England, I'd appreciate that, because I really want to look up a bit more about that. But this is where I got that document from, just searching around. But it's called an area, what is it? It's SSDC Welfare Benefit Work in South Somerset and Careline. I wonder if this document is coming from a council somewhere in South Somerset.
What, the document that you're looking at?
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be. It will be their council committee. You know, with their, because I know we had to do it. Yeah, every person that you see, you've got to put on a database. So and how much, you know, you have to keep an eye on your caseload, put in who you're seeing, how much you get for them. So it will just be, you know, to prove for funding.
If they've got some funding coming in, that they set up some of these welfare teams, and I mean, obviously based on the council, but if you can in any way get in touch or get in touch with your council and just say, do you have a benefit? Do you have a welfare team in the council that can help me out, or give me some advice or whatever, or can help me with, you know, legal, anything legal or anything like that that's connected to benefits, and or can come with me, you know, to an assessment, anything like that at all, you know. So I don't know, it's maybe worth just giving them a buzz and see if they exist there, or find an individual that you can speak to, have a meeting with, you know, this welfare officer. So yeah, I thought it was important just mentioning this document, you know, that little piece there, because it's got some positive case studies in here that people have done well, and haven't really been slung on the scrappy, because I've had somebody with them who was genuinely trying to help them. Yeah?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know.
Yeah.
I used to get loads of, because I couldn't accept money, and people, if you get a big payment for somebody, it's not even really about the money. It's
not about money, no. It's just about, you know, it's about just kind of surviving in the situation that you're in at the time, really, and getting some help. Really.
Yeah, it's the support that someone like that can give you, because people that do those kind of jobs do them because they want to do them. I know I did it because I wanted to do it, and the people that I helped were really grateful, not just for the money but for the support. And I stayed in contact with quite a lot of them, you know, for years after, because, you know, they were really nice people.
Yeah, I know, because it's about care. You see,
yeah.
you've got to feel as if you're being cared for. I mean, some people say, well, you know, that's not very independent or anything like that. But to be honest, if you're in a bad shape, care is what can bring you out of it. If you're in depression, care is what can bring you out of it. Because if you feel like you're getting support, I mean, that can help you really a hell of a lot. So yeah, it's very important. So yeah. So now what? Shall we go on to the next article? What do you want to
your next article, which I think will raise quite a lot of chat, and we might have to go on with this a bit later, but we've got a tune lined up for about 5 minutes, so let's give this a good 5 minutes then.
Yeah, I'll just give it a quick go ahead. This is a job centre, a job advertisement. I don't know exactly when it was done. It was last year, but it doesn't matter about when it was done. In fact, it's there. It's for webcam performers, and this is. I'll read the. See, it doesn't give much of. Just says like £100 a day, nationwide. It's a permanent job. Blah blah blah. And it says here, applicants must be aged 18 or over. To apply for this vacancy, you must contact your job centre office, arrange an interview with an advisor. Therefore, please give how to apply section. This is a home working vacancy. I mean, I'm reading this so people get an idea. Duties involve explicit sexual dialogue, which may cause embarrassment to some people. Duties require that successful applicants be nude, semi-nude. Webcam performers required, male, female, and couples.
Jeez.
Must have own broadband internet connection and computer. A job with a difference.
Yeah, that is a job with a difference. Yeah.
That's what they called it. A job with a difference, right?
Yeah.
Must be outgoing, friendly, and confident. Immediate start available. Duties will involve informal chatting via webcam over the internet for the purposes of adult entertainment, along with other activities. You know, blah blah blah. So basically, it's just one of these bloody websites that you just stick a camera in front of yourself and just say, you know, hey, look at me. You know. But this is basically marketed out there as a job. You know.
When I read this, when you put up the link to this, I was absolutely gobsmacked. I still am gobsmacked. I can't believe that Job Centre are advertising for people to perform nude or semi-nude, chatting via webcam over the internet for purposes of adult entertainment, and that you can do other activities that you feel comfortable with. Just disgusting.
There was something else in the comments. Somebody made a comment, I think it's on page 2, just quickly, about another job I think they said they saw. It says, hi everyone, I thought you would like to see this. There's a job centre advertisement for £10 an hour bikini-clad mud wrestlers. Women only apply.
See, I mean, this is a real worry, surely, when job centre are putting ads out for the sex industry.
This is I think this is linked to a Daily Mail Online article, news article. Yes, I see it right now.
Yeah, no, it just absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, it's job centre advertisers for £10 an hour, mud wrestlers, only women need apply. Employers insist that the job is not porn or adult work, but involves light-hearted mud wrestling for a pay-per-view site. Right, now I wonder what the pay-per-view site is called.
There you go. But the thing is that what is a reasonable excuse of a job centre when you say that that's immoral? What are they going to do? What's more than likely?
Well, that brings us on to the German thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, she got sanctioned, didn't she?
Well, there's I know that it's not new news, so people will have probably have heard of this, but it's women told to work in brothels or else. I mean, it's from January 2005, but I know that you've read this too, haven't you?
Well, yeah, I think was there something about that because Germany decided to make it legal or something?
I think it's the full legalisation of prostitution, so brothel owners now pay tax and employee health insurance, so employers can access the official government database. So if they can they want to be able to put their ads on, the equivalent of our direct gov to advertise their vacancies. And I suppose they think it's a job, it's a business, isn't it, for them? They're out to make money. They don't give a shit about their prostitutes, about their workforce, do they?
Yeah, it just reminds me of this, of these it's like some of these other countries, or even in the past, when you kind of where you were forced to do things, just forced in somewhere.
To stop someone's money because they don't want to take, a job in the sex industry, if that's happening in Germany, and I don't know, being snuck in here, I think. We've got to break to a tune now. Nick, Oh no, I'm lying. We're not breaking for a tune.
Joint claims.
We're going to put on the Joint Claims Tax Credits pod.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
How are you? All right.
Oh, pretty good.
Right, wanted to talk to you about the tax credits thing, the JSA thing and the compliance thing. What have you got anything you wanted to talk about?
There was only a couple of side issue things, nothing generally current. I think it was just a little bit on Atos. I found one great site.
Ah, good. Well, the tax credit stuff, shall I give you a rough outline of the case?
Yeah, if it's the one I'm thinking of.
With this claim, the issue was a previous joint claim, couple split, made a single claim, woman made a single claim for herself because they had genuinely split. He wasn't living at that address, however, he still has post at that address. When I say post, he still has bank statements sent there, he still pays for, they've got children, so he still pays for the mobile phone, and also for, I think he pays for their TV as well. He does have posts sent to that address. They have split. Claimant receives, she receives a letter asking her to provide evidence of his address to prove that he's not living, with her. She can't prove any of this. We've called tax credits together, and they've asked, they've literally, while I was talking to them, she's logged onto a computer, got onto the Experian credit system, and has told me that they could see that he was having they were asked about car insurance as well. He doesn't drive, so they were asking questions like that. So their questions were quite specific, and they can access a lot of information. Experian, your credit history will show everything. So if they can log into yours or mine or whoever's credit report, they can see who you're paying. If you paid your Barclay card on, it shows how many Barclay card payments you've missed out or that have been late. It shows any CCJs. It shows late payments for insurance. It shows everything. So basically, once they can get into that, they can look at anything that that you've possibly paid into. It's pretty impressive, don't you think, that they can get that kind of info?
I think I saw this at first hand. I actually had an ex-DWP colleague, and he I think he was actually on a leave of absence. He was still technically employed. He was on a leave of absence caring for his mother, who had actually, she'd also been ex-DWP.
Okay.
And I think his mother actually sent a postcard to one of her ex-colleagues in work from Cyprus, where she was away. They launched a very big investigation on him. I think he had a few different things to sort out with them. He was being interviewed, and I don't want to go into too many details, but basically on the strength of a postcard, they started the investigation. He knew they'd been through his bank accounts. He was fortunate because he had a pay-as-you-go mobile, they couldn't trace his call records and a lot more. And I think the main thing hinged on they wanted to know, because he was claiming as a carer, they wanted to know if he'd been back and forth as part of his caring responsibilities. And he said, well, I don't have the information to hand, I don't have documents, but you can contact Cyprus Airways. And purely because that airline is outside of the jurisdiction, they couldn't go further. And he had enough savvy to know if I'd told them it was a British Airways flight, they would have known exactly who's come and gone and when.
It's the level of information they can access now is just, I think, pretty unbelievable. I wouldn't have thought that they could ever access anything like that. Or have the authority to access that, surely.
And also one of the issues with this particular case is that because of the ill health of the wife, that although they'd split, because they've got sort of children still living at home, when the wife was hospitalised, obviously, you know what I mean, the absent father isn't just going to simply leave the children to fend for themselves. Of course, he went back home to care for the children during the periods when the wife wasn't capable of doing so. So even while they've been split, he's never really fully separated from the house and the children, simply because of the necessity of the wife's ill health.
However, under those circumstances, if you look at their guidance and their examples, if that's the case, then you should be making a joint claim under those circumstances.
But he wasn't actually living there, was he?
I know, it doesn't matter.
It wasn't even like 3 nights a week or anything. This was just simply whenever the wife was hospitalised, obviously, him as a parent, he can't live at the home because they can't get on as a couple. So with her in hospital, of course, that is no longer an issue, and I don't think that they're contending the home as such. I don't think that the husband is in any way contesting the wife's, legitimacy in the home, and is quite happy to leave her in situ there, and make his own way in the world. But the situation, the domestic situation, is such that if he was to completely remove himself from that family home, then there would be nobody to be able to care for the children when the wife and mum is not well.
I think made a point. I think the fact there's still been a contact, and it would seem from what you're saying that they have made attempts to find an alternative address, and if that's failed, then they've come back and said, all right, prove there's another address. If there's no evidence, they fall back. And I know from my reading of, I had a quick look when you briefed me. I had a quick look through some of their regs, and the things of living together and civil partnerships, there's a lot of ifs, ands and buts in there. But if it comes down to an actual marriage, I think it's married is married, full stop.
Yeah, it sort of says, for tax credit purposes, it says very clearly that unless you're separated by a court order, or the separation is likely to be permanent, that you are still, in their eyes, married, so you should be making a joint claim. Unless the separation is permanent, it's likely to be permanent.
Well, that's the word that they use, isn't it? It's the likely to be permanent, and frankly, their situation was that the separation was likely to be permanent. Yeah. And what they were doing was that they were taking the adult approach to dealing with the issue of their marital breakdown without letting that overflow and impact on the children's health and well-being, which is a completely admirable thing to do and should entirely be catered for within the regulations as they stand.
However, they don't seem to be, or they're not, and I think this case in particular shows their callousness, their complete lack of knowledge of the system. When I tell you what they said to me this morning, Nick, you'll fall on the floor, you really won't believe it. I need to sort of tell you sort of the build-up to, the final conversation this morning.
Well, I think I only know I started out in the Inland Revenue in a nice, quiet little backwater dealing with charities up in Liverpool, and I transferred down to try and get ahead. I actually I had an EO post on the South Coast, and I was working in an office, mainly because I was trying to get into the computer side, and I knew they were in the same sites, but I ended up in what was called their compliance section. I know definitions have changed. All they were doing was anything over set limits, it comes to us to start collating paperwork to go to a clerk in the High Court to sign papers to make you bankrupt. No hearings, no ifs, ands, and buts. We were the ones who had to make the case so airtight, it didn't have to go to open courts.
So paperwork, you collate all the evidence in that particular section, and once all that info was collected, then it would be dealt with.
They had specific people in the courts. Their legal team would actually go and talk to a High Court clerk and present the case, and it had to be so cut and dry that the clerk would literally sign it off and say, yes, we will agree that.
So the paperwork that you were collating was their evidence, and it had to be so tight. Okay, that's interesting. We'll have to talk about that more another time. But the reason that the tax credits thing is, I just wonder how much they follow their guidance as well, because what happened? So I called this thing. We called them together. They did the Experian credit report check while we were on the phone. Couldn't trace the ex-partner at all. I don't know. I think, and everything else was still being sent to her address. And because they'd only split not that long ago, and if you think how traumatic a breakdown is, and then especially when you've got she had other hospital issues going on, so she was hospitalised a couple of times. All those things going on. Your priority isn't going to be getting your bank change. Getting your bank statement sent somewhere else. It's just I don't know, they expect an awful lot of you. If you don't do something immediately, then there must be a reason, and they're very suspicious. So that happened. Obviously she had 30 days to provide evidence, which she knew she wouldn't be able to provide, so she accepted that at the end of this financial year, at the end of March, she would have to close her claim. Now, my understanding was that if she couldn't provide this evidence, and their guidance clearly states, which I'll read out to you in a moment, that they wouldn't recover their money. After the 30 days have gone by, this brings us to last week. I spoke to them last week. I spoke to the person that was dealing with her case, and she told me that they would try to recover the money from the client, regardless of the fact of her hospitalisation, whether or not how it would impact her personally. She didn't care. I actually mentioned, I wasn't upset particularly. I was just absolutely gobsmacked that they wouldn't, that they would continue to pursue her after explaining her personal circumstances. And after we had been told, they never said that they wouldn't recover the money, but my understanding was that if she could not provide the evidence satisfactorily, either way, that she would have to close her claim and there would be no recovery for the previous year. When I spoke to her on Friday, that wasn't the case. It was, okay, claim will close and we'll start recovering the money from last year because she can't provide the evidence. I said something like, so you're happy to, you would be happy to drive, this person perhaps to suicide. I don't think I even said it quite that bluntly, but I know I mentioned the word suicide. I think the call will have been recorded anyway. And she said, she actually stopped the conversation and said, I'm sorry, I have to go now, I can't continue this conversation anymore, and put down the phone. And I was a bit gobsmacked because, I didn't speak to her in any sort of out of tone manner. I wasn't aggressive, I was pretty passive. I just made the point that, people's personal circumstances can sometimes mean suicide. It can mean, if you are in that position and your mental health is delicate, or unpredictable, that it could be a potential, and it's something they have to be aware of, surely. So mentioning the word suicide shouldn't be the reason to terminate a call, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it touches on a couple of things. I think, first of all, I know from being inside very briefly how the Inland Revenue, or HMRC as they are now called, are in a totally different league to any other government department. They are more officious. Their rules are interpreted to the letter. Most of their stuff, where they've dealt with the tax system, and in my opinion, they are completely clueless dealing with tax credits, which is it's really just a way to move it from a benefit system. But I think they are, I did a lot of work trying to encourage people onto family credit when that existed.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was exceptional. I took the time out to learn. We had a little PC system that would spreadsheets all people's finances to show how much better or worse off they were. I actually had occasions where I had a couple of people who came in and I said, I have to warn you, you might be about £10 worse off by taking the job. And they said, no, as long as I know, I am still wanting to take this work. I want to go out of work.
So you could at least explain to them that they may be better off or worse off taking this job, and show them, which is something that I think that other advisors in job centres should be able to do, but they don't. That's another matter. But with so this call ended with this woman hanging up on me, telling me she didn't want to talk to me anymore. The following day, no, not the following day, on Monday, yesterday, I got a call from her manager, and I thought the call would be her ringing to say to me, you've upset my member of staff, how dare you? But it wasn't. She just said to me, I'm ringing you because my colleague got very upset with the discussion that you were having the other day. And I was like, well, surely we discussed suicide, and, I wasn't shouting at her. I was making the point that perhaps, you could drive somebody to suicide, and if that isn't a topic that somebody who's making decisions on people's lives isn't happy to talk about or hasn't dealt with before, surely they shouldn't be in that job.
I think it shows how far removed they are from the ideas of public service that used to be so strong. There was another thing that came in that I know there's been a bit of chatter on certain websites, that there's been briefings going around DWP about suicide threats and comments about that, which has freaked the staff out. And I wonder if something similar has been happening within their organisation too.
Well, all I said was, you could perhaps. It was the word suicide, and it wasn't a direct. It was more of a third person, so this potential, the outcome could be suicide for somebody. It wasn't even a personal comment about that particular client. It was a general comment on suicide, and she just said, I'm not taking this call anymore. I'm going to terminate the call, and hung up on me. Then this manager rings me and apologises for her colleague hanging up. Well, she didn't exactly apologise. She was ringing to discuss the fact that her colleague had terminated the call because she got very upset, and she wasn't actually in work the following day because of the conversation. That was what she told me, that she was still very upset and she was calling me to discuss the situation. So I said, surely she has dealt with clients in this, in a similar situation. Because I can't believe if you're taking calls and you're dealing with caseload like that you do not deal with people that are, upset, irate. They're all going to, they've all been written to telling them that they have to provide evidence for their ex-partner. Some of them will be able to do that, others won't. So it's I can't believe that, they've not heard anything like that before.
I get the feeling possibly they've heard too much of it. If the woman's gone sick, maybe you just hit a nerve, or it's things that have gone before. I wonder how much of that they're actually coping with at the moment, and whether they're coping with it at all.
Well, from that story from the CSA pursuing that man to the point of suicide when he was a CSA employee, it may well be that they've lost colleagues to it.
She called me, the call ended with her telling me that she couldn't find the case notes because the caseworker was off due to the call, and she would call me back today with information on how the case was to proceed. So she called me this afternoon, and basically her words to me were, I actually wrote it all down, they want to recover the money. They have to recover the money regardless of the circumstances, even though they have the discretion not to recover. They still have to recover, in her opinion. Her advice was to tell my client to make a joint claim for tax credits. They were going to end her single claim because obviously she isn't in their opinion, she isn't a single person, and to make a joint claim. I was absolutely gobsmacked when she advised her to make a joint claim. If she is not with her partner, advising her to make a joint claim is advising her to do something illegal.
Possibly not in this situation. I think when they were asking for proof, where they're talking about where a separation is being legally recognised, I think if they'd asked for proof and, even if she didn't have any legal papers to say, right, we have instructed a solicitor to start divorce proceedings, maybe that would have swung it. The thing I'm more interested in, and you're saying they have discretion.
Yes, they do.
That's something new to me, and I think that might be worth digging into to maybe push, because I would assume there's some sort of appeal right to try and access this discretion idea.
There isn't. You just have to ask them. Well, you ask them to. You just state that it will cause you hardship, and it's up to them whether or not they recover the money. And what you were saying about the joint claim, I can't believe that, because their guidance very clearly states that. Hold on, I will read it to you.
Well, one question, could they actually put the claim in and ask for it to be backdated? I'm not fully aware of their setup, but could they backdate it to cover that period? Hold
on, where's it gone now? Right. This is Commissioner's Decision CCM 15075, and this is what it says. Undisclosed partner has no other address. A claimant may accept that the suspected partner uses their address for mailing purposes. This could be for 1, tax and benefit purposes, 2, financial purposes, bank account, credit card, loan, 3, for motor vehicle purposes, insurance, vehicle registration. The claimant might suggest this is because the suspected partner has no fixed abode and simply drifts from around a series of friends, or because their mail is not secure at their own home. You are entitled to ask for evidence of the suspected partner's other accommodation address, and often an appeal tribunal will ask for this sort of information. However, you cannot demand that they provide such information, nor can you say that if they do not provide evidence of an alternative address, you will treat them as living together as husband or wife and terminate their award. The absence of such evidence is not conclusive proof that the claimant is living with the suspected partner. Where the claimant cannot provide such evidence, you must still look at all the other criteria and decide their various strengths and weaknesses. In addition, you should consider whether it is reasonable for the suspected partner to be using the claimant's address. Now, to me, that is specific guidance that they are not following. The manager on the phone to me today said she was following guidance, and I asked her to point me to that guidance. Even though it's in the public domain, she wouldn't do so. I mean, does that Commissioner's decision clearly states that they're not following guidance properly?
I think the thing you might need to actually point out that specific Commissioner's decision, and you may be able to get further now you have a manager involved. Commissioner's decisions normally, general staff don't follow what is effectively case law in those terms.
Well, it didn't matter what I said to her, Nick. It didn't seem to matter what I said to her. I was saying, I have got the guidance in front of me. It's not, what guidance are you following? Because it's not the guidance that I'm following. And all she kept repeating to me was the tax credits manual. And I said, that's what I've got in front of me. And she said, the tax credits guidance manual. I've got that in front of me. That was all she kept repeating. I asked her for the link. How can I find a decision that, that isn't even there? Because I don't know what guidance they're following, but it's certainly not this guidance.
I mean, I think if you've got her to admit the tax credits manual, say, well, I would actually say to her, I'm looking at paragraph number whatever.
That's what I said, and she just kept repeating. She just kept repeating to me, well, I've been told to follow this guidance. If you want to make a complaint, here's the address. We will be recovering the money. We will be writing to her. If you want to complain, that's the route to go.
I think only from basically what they've said, it doesn't sound like they're actually having the guidance open in front of them, or there's been some misinterpretation. But given what they've said, if the only option now is to follow a complaint procedure, I would say follow it. They've made that offer. I'd say accept it and go with it.
Yes, I mean, I took the address and I will be writing to them. And I was even saying to at appeal with all the information that you will have in front of you, and we offer to send in information from her GP, information from her consultant. You know, they didn't want any of that, so they clearly don't want to base anything out of their decision on anything else but the fact that they cannot put him at another address, which is clear from their guidance that they shouldn't be doing. I actually want to push this case right to the forefront, because I think a lot of people will be having these sort of issues, and I can't believe that they've been lied to. And she was actually saying to me, I'm following the guidance. Well, what fucking guidance? Because I can't fucking see it.
It's probably more what they've been told about in the guide, and in their training someone has taken them through it, and whether they've paid attention or not to everything. It may be more a case of what notes they took, how well they took the information in. I don't imagine they're referencing the guide on a regular basis. They're probably too busy these days.
But Nick, if they're telling me this for a client, what are they telling people in absolute distress that have no clue what they're doing?
I think it's the same thing, and it really troubles me the way everything seems to shunt from. Everything seems to be drifting from DWP. DWP was a lot fairer. I know most people may not agree with that. They had a lot of procedures in. If there was a mistake, it was investigated thoroughly. If it was an error in the office, it was usually written off. I know the taxman does not do that. If there's an error, and it's corrected, whatever the consequences.
And that's the way it seemed to be with this call. She was just telling me, I'm following the guidance. I'm not telling you which guidance it is. I'm following the guidance, even though I'm telling her that guidance isn't correct, because I've got the guidance in front of me. And all she kept repeating was, I'm looking at it's a tax credits manual. That's what she kept saying.
Yeah, and I can fully appreciate that. It's not right, but I know there's a mindset, I think, within the revenue people that they are external to everything else in government. We are the people who bring in the money. We fund everything that happens. And therefore, I think there is an air of superiority and infallibility in them that is really, really wrong.
Yeah, I was just absolutely gobsmacked by that, with her advice. Just shocking. And I do feel it's an absolute shame that this will have to go to appeal. But if it does, I really want to push this to the front and have this really,
From what you're saying, it sounds like there's a very strong case for appeal. And once you get in front of a tribunal, you're dealing with independent people who do judge the merits of a case. It's not totally fair, but it's a darn sight fairer than just dealing with the employees.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, thank you because I saw the stuff that you posted, and they're brilliant commissioners' decisions, because it shows what they look at when you make a claim and how they treat you as living together or not. So that's something that we should definitely put up on the website.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Neo's done some amazing stuff on job seekers with the steps to finding jobs.
Oh, excellent.
Have you not seen that?
I haven't.
Think this was phenomenal. It struck me, and I was talking to, I won't name drop, Wild Swan.
Who?
I was talking Wild Swan,
Oh, yeah, yes, yeah.
And it was just actually when Neo put up the law, and it said you must take 3 steps to find a job every week.
Yeah.
But everyone is being given a contract to sign to say you must apply for 3 jobs a week. Now, I'd had this, it was a couple of weeks back, whilst she got a call from an agency who said, we have a job offer that might suit you. And then they faxed her a confidentiality agreement before they could go further, which she signed and returned. And then they did a phone interview. And it was just my civil service mind said, write those down as 3 separate items. They're 3 separate steps.
Yes, they are, aren't they?
And ultimately, you can take 3 steps for one job and you've complied with the law. But the job centre seemed to have a different take on that.
Because I was thinking about when I was in the job centre the other day. I was thinking steps, because it does actually say that it's that wording on the form. It says, I need to take 3 steps a week to finding work, and I thought steps. What's that doesn't necessarily have to be applying for a job every week, which is what I've been writing in there. That's interesting, to actually have taken that a bit further. Nice one.
No, Neo posted it up. They actually have a list of certain examples of the steps you can take, and it's rewriting your CV as a step. I know from one of our mutual friends who is she lives over Surrey way and used to work in management circles. She's gone into the job centre and said, I've been phoning some of my old friends and doing some networking to find out if any vacancies are coming up. Even a matter of talking to an ex-workmate to look for job vacancies would be considered a step.
That's great. So even talking to somebody about a potential job could be a step to finding work, and it could be a genuine step.
Yeah, I think in the same way, for that matter, someone a bit more informal, if they go round and knock on an employer's door and say, have you got any work going? Even one of those itself is a step.
We definitely need to get all this onto the website, and there was a couple of posts that I bookmarked to read out because they were so pertinent to the issue around the work programme and the difficulties people are having with the work programme. So I'll definitely post those too, because they were good. Would you mind just having a quick chat with me about